Welcome back to the Raw Prospect Podcast, everybody. My name is Imy Nixon. Today is September 23rd, 2022. And today we're going to be talking about Thursday night football from last night. The Browns taking down the Steelers, then making our week 3 predictions for the NFL and week 4 predictions for college football. But before we do that, joining me from Austin, Texas, the Stat King himself, Mr. Michael. What's up?
What is up, Emmy? My fantastic co-host. We're back for another episode 123, an afternoon recording, which is rare for us. Week 3 of NFL and week 4 of college football. Let's just jump right in. No BSing here at the start because we're on a time crunch.
Yeah.
What were your impressions of last night's game? Steelers Browns.
Well, to put it simply, I liked what I saw from the Steelers offense in the first half. A lot of moving pockets, a lot of, you know, um, mixing up of the different things they like to do. Short passing, obviously, that's their bread and butter. That's what they're going to continue to do the entire season. But as Kurt Herbstreit mentioned on the broadcast, a lot more passing further down the field. Obviously, that huge catch by George Pickens, that was crazy. I really didn't think Mitch looked that bad. The offensive line, like y'all were running the football decently well. I just think on the defensive side of the ball is kind of where you got let down. I think if you were going to win this game, or if the Steelers were going to win this game, they had to do it defensively.
Yeah, I'll keep this brief. From a positive perspective, the offensive line so far this season, and I tweeted this out yesterday, has been much better than Steelers fans thought it was going to be, especially in pass protection. There were a lot of times last night, even especially in that first half, where Mitch had a long time to throw the ball. And that was good to see. The pass protection overall has been pretty good. No more than like 1 to 2 sacks each game, I believe. And we've been going up against some decent big name pass rushers. I've been very impressed with Dan Moore, our left tackle, who struggled a lot in preseason, but he's continuing to make strides. I thought they're still inconsistent in the running game. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. It's just a play-to-play basis. But I did think that taking those shots downfield sort of opened up the running game at times for not only Najee Harris, but Jaylen Warren as well. I love what I saw from Jaylen Warren coming undrafted rookie out of Oklahoma State. He's going to give this team a much-needed punch to spell Najee when Najee is not in the game. I thought Mitch played decent. They just did not maintain the up-tempo style offense that I think they need to maintain for the entire game because it was working in the first half, and they went away from it for whatever reason in the second half. And from a defensive perspective, it just wasn't very good. They got dominated up front. Credit the Browns' offensive line. They could not stop the run. It's the same issue they had last year. They're very squishy up front in the run game, and it's worsened by the fact that TJ Watt is not there. And they're now 0-6 in games where TJ Watt does not play. And you can see the difference in the pass rush. They still got there at times, but it's not near as lethal as we saw in week 1 against the Bengals. And that's really what won the Steelers the game, is that defensive front. So, yeah, next week's, from a Steelers fan's perspective, is going to be a must-win game. We have the Jets at home. You got to win that game. You have 10 days to prepare because after that, the gauntlet really starts. You go to Buffalo. You have home against Tampa Bay. Then you go to Philly. Or no, you go to Miami, and you go to Philly. That is a gauntlet where if you're not careful, the way it's looking right now, you could lose all 4 of those games fairly easily. So the Jets are a must win.
For sure. Um, okay, now we can get right into our game picks. But just for some context, guys, sorry if it seems like we're rushing this. I have a class at 2 p.m. It's currently 1 p.m. So if we don't, do things pretty quickly here, this podcast, it's going to be a tight time crunch. So that's really the only reason. We'll be back to normal for the next episode. But let's just get right into it. We're going to start with college football. Um, but just address last week real quickly. Um, it was not a very good, uh, not a very good week picking wise for us. Uh, we mentioned it on the live stream a few days ago. So watching that, but hopefully we'll bounce back this week. And our first game is Clemson at Wake Forest. What do you think?
Well, Clemson -7 on the road in their first real test against the Wake Forest team that has their starting quarterback back in the fold, and Sam Hartman, a really talented kid who missed the first game against VMI, Virginia Military Institute, due to some blood clotting issues. Hopefully he's okay, but he's returned the past couple of games, played really well, just as we expected him to coming into the season before those medical issues, throwing for over 630 yards and 7 touchdowns in the 2 games combined. Therefore, against lesser competition, this Clemson defense is obviously the driver of success for this Clemson team. They are playing opportunistic football. They're forcing turnovers, and they're doing a great job of stopping the run. They're only allowing 2.4 yards per carry up until this point. That ranks tops in the country. And this defensive front is one of the best in the country, just in terms of the front four and what they deploy there from a talent perspective. So from a Wake Forest perspective, if you want to win this game, and obviously it's, it's at home, so that will obviously give them somewhat of an advantage. But you got to work that running game. You got to find a way to get the run game going and work the play action off of that. But to me, even though I have my doubts about DJU, I'm calling him DJU. I don't like to say his last name. I can't pronounce it. And I do think if he struggles early, you could easily see the 5-star from Westlake, Cade Klubnik, who is their backup. I think they could easily go to him fairly quickly if they get in some trouble early in this game. But I think you're going to see DJU step up. I think you're going to see this Clemson defense, one the likes of Wake hasn't seen much, or hasn't seen up until this point, not even close. In terms of a talent perspective, they're going to continue to be opportunistic, force a couple turnovers, and that'll be the difference. Clemson has won 13 of the last 15 meetings, and Wake hasn't beaten Clemson since 2006. So I'm going to take Clemson. It'll be close. I'm going to take them to pull away late with maybe a turnover or two. I'll take them to win by about 10. I'm going to take them to win and cover.
Okay, yeah. I think that's fair. I'm going to take Clemson. Um, I agree with everything you said. And I just think DJU, as you said, I think he's taken a step forward this year as a passer. Um, Not to mention, they also have their star running back. What was his name? Uh, Will Shipley, who's a threat in the pass game and in the run game as well. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I think if you're going to bet on anything in this game, it's probably going to be over that 68-point mark. But I'm going to pick Clemson. I'm going to pick them to cover.
Okay. Let's not worry so much about typing the picks into the spreadsheet. I can go back and listen to this podcast later and do that later. Let's move on just for the sake of time.
Yep.
Baylor at Iowa State. Do you have any thoughts on this game? It's Iowa State -2.5. By the way, Baylor lost. They already have a loss on their schedule. They lost to a BYU team who last week got demolished by Oregon, who got demolished by Georgia. So Baylor's in a 2-1 situation. They're traveling on the road to Ames, Iowa, to face Iowa State team. What do you think?
Man, this is a tough one. I really don't know what to think about Baylor's offense. The last time I watched them play was in that BYU game, and their quarterback, they didn't trust him at all. So if they have any semblance of a passing game, I think they'll win. But if they're not able to become 2 dimensional in that sense, then this is going to be a really tough out. Then, but I'm going to pick. I don't know. I think I'm going to pick Iowa State, but I'm going to pick Baylor to cover. I think it's just going to be a really tight game. These uh, conference matchups always seem to be pretty close, so I'm hoping for a tight one.
Yeah, real fast from a Baylor perspective. Blake Shapen, their quarterback, who played a little bit late last year, took over for an injured Charlie Brewer. Played really well down the stretch, won them the Big 12 championship last year. This year, he's just sort of been fine. He's been doing what he needs to do, not necessarily anything beyond that. He hasn't made a big slew of mistakes, which has been good. He's been fairly accurate with the football, keeping everything moving in a game manager sense, but hasn't been anything special. It's really been the run game for Baylor, averaging over 240 yards on the ground. That's been the driver of their success. I think that's the key to this game. Iowa State's defense has been playing fantastic. Weird things happen when you go to Ames, Iowa. It's a hard place to play. Um, and what their quarterback is doing, I'm forgetting his name as of right now, but I think Iowa's defense is going to step up at home. They're going to be able to limit what Baylor is going to do in the run game, and they're going to do just enough to win this game by a field goal. So I'm going to take Iowa State to upset Baylor at home and to cover the 2.5 point spread.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so next game is number 20 Florida versus number 11 Tennessee. What do you think?
Well, this is a matchup of styles. Which style is ultimately going to win out? You have a Florida team that likes to pound the football. The running game has been super effective so far, whether that's in the QB running game with Anthony Richardson, who's ultra talented and could absolutely go off at any time, or handing it off to the talented stable of backs that they have. They've really haven't been able to find any consistency in terms of passing the football down the field. It's going to take, I think, a recruiting cycle or two to get the guys that Billy Napier wants into the system. But Anthony Richardson certainly has the talent. And Florida certainly, as we saw week 1 against Utah, can muck this game up if they play their style of football. But if it's a racetrack game like Tennessee wants to play, they're, I think, maybe the fastest paced offense in the country as of right now with Hendon Hooker and a lot of the weapons that they have. Josh Heupel's offense, it's like a NASCAR, uh, F1 race. Um, I think Tennessee wins this game going away. So it's really just of pace and style. And ultimately, right now, I just think Tennessee, with their defense, which has actually been better than last year, that's really what held them back last year. They've been playing better, especially in the running game, not allowing the big plays as often. I think Tennessee, considering it's at home, even though Florida has had Tennessee's number, um, I do think Tennessee gets this one, but I am going to take Florida to cover. I just think 11 points is a huge spread in a rivalry game like this.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to Florida to cover also, and Tennessee to win. I just think as long as Tennessee can keep Anthony Richardson in the pocket, um, that I think they're further along in their rebuild of their program. I'd say, and I think they're more ready to win in these tight, close games. Um, I think possibly that high, fast-paced offense will pay dividends, especially late in that fourth quarter when everyone's tired. And playing in Tennessee, it'll be even harder for that Florida defense to kind of collect themselves. So I'm going to pick Tennessee, but Florida to cover.
All right, last game, Arkansas and Texas A&M. Texas A&M recovered nicely last week. This is nothing special, but they beat bless you. They beat a good Miami team, I think, a team that was ranked. Nice way to rebound for Jimbo Fisher's team after losing at home to Appalachian State. This says Arkansas at Texas A&M, but it's actually a neutral site game. It's going to be played at AT&T Stadium in Dallas, like it always is. And, you know, it's pretty evenly matched as every year with in terms of fans that go to the game from a fan perspective. For me, though, the biggest weakness for Arkansas right now is their secondary by far. They're actually one of the worst passing defenses in terms of yards given up so far in the entire country. The secondary is just young. It's not really. It's going to take some time for them to kind of gel together. Um, and that would be a problem if they were facing, an explosive passing offense, maybe the likes of Alabama, who they're going to play here, I think, next week, or, maybe some other teams in the SEC, like a Tennessee or teams like that. But they're playing a team in A&M that's had real problems exploiting defenses down the field. And I think Arkansas, given what they have up front, will be able to, a Sam Pittman type game, stop the run and make Max Johnson beat them down the field with his arm. Um, the line right now is at Texas A&M 2.5. I do not know why A&M is favored in this game, but I am going to take Arkansas to win this game outright and obviously cover the spread.
Yeah, I have to agree with you again. I mean, this was one of the games that I was looking at before on on the spreadsheet before this podcast, and I was just like, why is the spread like that? Just based on what we've seen from Texas A&M and what we've seen from Arkansas, I just think A&M, they haven't shown to be consistent offensively. I guess the best way to put it. Um, Max Johnson is fine. I mean, he was fine at LSU. He'll be fine here, but I think Arkansas is going to find a way to make it hard on him, especially with that pass rush that they have. Um, and I'm expecting probably a low scoring game, but I think Arkansas will pull it out.
Okay, so with that, we're about 19 minutes in here. We're on a good pace. We have about 30 minutes here until we need to wrap up, 35 minutes. So we'll move on to our 6 NFL games for the week. Week 3 in the NFL. Our first game, Sunday afternoon, early window, Buffalo Bills. 2 blowout wins so far against 2 pretty good teams. -5.5 at the Miami Dolphins, who are coming off an insane victory at the Baltimore Ravens. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this one's tough. It's because it's so hard to really know how much um, Tua specifically has progressed in terms of what Leslie Frazier, the Bills' defensive coordinator, is going to want to do to exploit his weaknesses. It's hard to really know just based off the first couple games of the season. I'd like to believe he's progressed a ton, but this will be the test. This will answer all our questions. And I think the speed that the Dolphins has is an extremely underrated part of this because I think that's one of the things the Bills defense is lacking. Um, just speed on the back end. If you look at their safeties, Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, like even those guys, as great as they are, they don't really have the top end speed um, if they need to run hip to hip with somebody. They're usually a step ahead just because of how smart they are in the game plan. Um, but Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, that's different. So because of that, I think the Dolphins won't have any problem moving the ball. I've liked what they've seen from this offensive line, and I also think ultimately Mike McDaniel is the right coach for this team, which is the first time we've been able to say that about the Dolphins since Brian Flores. Well, I guess that was only one coach ago, but it feels a lot different with it being an offensive-minded guy that can lift to a up, if that makes sense. Um, so I'm going to pick the Dolphins to cover, and I expect this to be a really close game all the way through.
So are you taking Miami to cover,
Oh,
Buffalo to
I'm
win?
taking the Dolphins to cover, Bills to win. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. I think, look, this series the past couple of years has been dominated by Buffalo. The last 7 meetings, they've won all of them by an average of almost 3 touchdowns, 19 points, the average margin of victory there. To me, and I tweeted this out during the Monday Night Football game, so far, Buffalo to me just looks like the best team at full strength in the NFL. That's a different conversation for another day, though. They're going on the road to Miami. Miami's a tough place to play in September. If you look at the numbers the past couple of years, especially for AFC East teams, the humidity, it's hot. I think that's going to absolutely play a factor here. The difference with this Dolphins team this year as opposed to last year is, as Amy mentioned, the offensive line is playing better. I love their stable of running backs. And, of course, you have more speed and weapons on the outside. And I think Tua, if we're going to start to talk about Tua as, Mike McDaniel's elevating Tua to be what we all thought he might be coming out of the draft, he's going to have to build off last week's performance. This cannot be a letdown performance. And that's what I sort of worry about with Miami. I mean, a 21-point comeback victory in the fourth quarter after you throw for 6 touchdowns. I just worry about an emotional letdown for Miami. But I think due to the factors playing in Miami in September, along with the fact that I believe Jordan Poyer is going to be out with an injury, one of the Bills' important pieces in that secondary, I'm going to take Miami to cover, but I do expect Buffalo to win the game.
Yeah, I agree. I just think this Buffalo team is too good. As good as I think the Dolphins are, I just think Josh Allen will still have his way because he's Josh Allen. So, with that, we'll move it right along to our second game between two 0-2 teams, two playoffs teams from last year who are now 0-2. The Las Vegas Raiders visiting the Tennessee Titans, with the Raiders favored -2.5. I'll start off with this one. I think with this game, I genuinely think the Raiders um, are still a playoff caliber team. They just had, a couple of tough losses. I think they came out flat in week one. A lot of teams did. And then week two, Kyler Murray snuck up on them. They kind of fumbled the bag a little bit with clock management, and just management things here and there. But overall, I think they've looked like we thought they would, maybe a little bit more explosive offensively, but they've looked the part if you've watched those games. The Titans, on the other hand, I don't know where they're really sitting at, especially offensively. Um, I mean, Derrick Henry hasn't looked quite like Derrick Henry. I mean, he's still very effective. Don't get me wrong, but he hasn't broken off one of those big Derrick Henry runs that he tends to do. He's taken over games for this team for so long that when he's not doing it, it's kind of like, where are you going to find, where are you going to fill in the pieces, you know? So I think with this Titans team, with their young receiving core and their young cornerback room as well, I think that can be exploited, and I think that's why I'm going to take the Raiders to cover and win outright. Cover that spread.
I agree with you. Coming into the season, I mean, of course, the schematics are a thing to watch when Josh McDaniels is your head coach. You've gotten off to an 0-2 start. You had sort of a semi-meltdown last week against Arizona at home. A couple of fumbles here and there, a couple of mistakes here and there caused you to lose the game. You couldn't get the stop on the last drive of regulation. Kyler Murray was running all over the place. And, I have a better chance of, jumping in a pool and staying dry than they had of tackling Kyler Murray down there in the red zone. But one of the things I was interested in coming into the season, even though I didn't voice it here on the podcast, how does Josh McDaniels handle the non-X's and O's aspect of coaching, if you know what I mean? We know that he's brilliant in what he can scheme up offensively. He knows the X's and O's. We don't doubt his ability to coach that, even though for some odd reason Davante Adams only had 2 catches last week. But I'm interested to see. I mean, they're 0-2. I never like to say something this early in September is a must-win game, but this feels like sort of a must-win game between 2 0-2 teams. I'm interested to see how the Raiders respond. But given from a Tennessee perspective, they just looked unhinged, pretty uncharacteristic from Mike Vrabel coach team up until this point in his coaching tenure. Tannehill still trying to get some chemistry with these younger receivers, as you mentioned. I thought Derrick Henry's looked fine, but now key players on both sides of the ball are hurt, and their statuses are unknown at this point. Taylor Lewan, in a huge piece on that offensive line, is hurt. We don't know the extent of that yet, but if I had to guess, he probably doesn't play in this game because we still don't know his status. And I think if he was okay, we would have known that by this point. But maybe I haven't seen the reports that have come out today. And then on the other side of the ball, Bud Dupree also left that Monday night game early. And it seems to me that Tennessee always has a problem just getting off the field when they need to, playing situational defense. I think Davante Adams is going to have a bounce-back performance, and I expect the Raiders to win this game and cover. And in fact, I'm so confident I'm going to make it my lock of the week.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, we'll move right along. Our next matchup is going to be the LA Rams at the Arizona Cardinals. Rams favored -3.5. What are you thinking?
Man, it's been weird. What do I think of the Cardinals and what do I think of the Rams? Both teams have had an awkward start to the season. But just in terms of what I think in terms of this game, no real in-depth analysis here. I just think the Rams are the better football team. I know that Kyler Murray is dynamic. What we saw last week, he basically pulled a rabbit out of his ass, and they won that game. A dot in the back of the end zone to who was it that caught that? Was it AJ Green?
I think it was Birch.
Yeah, whatever that was on that 2-point conversion to tie the game. in the back of the end zone at the end of regulation. That was an absolute dot. What he was doing back there in the pocket, scrambling around, making plays. We all know that Marquee Brown has had a big he's played a big role, which I love to see. And that was a big win for Arizona. But this is a division game. It's in Arizona. But I just think the Rams right now, on both sides of the ball, are the better football team. I think we're going to see a good game from Matthew Stafford. I have questions for Arizona defensively, all over the place. What is the line again?
-3.5.
-3.5 on the road. It is a divisional game, but I think I am going to take the Rams to win and cover.
Yeah.
Just a gut
Fair
feeling.
enough. Yeah. I mean, I think this game really comes down to I just think the Rams have more high-end talent than the Cardinals. I mean, with Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, they have guys on every level of that defense. Bobby Wagner, didn't even mention him. And then on the offense, I think last week, I mean, I wouldn't say it was a get-right game with how they finished that game, but I do think they were headed on the right track. Matthew Stafford looked more comfortable. And I don't think they're really fearing this Arizona defense. I just think Sean McVay is going to be able to have a field day in terms of game planning against this team because there's a lot of holes in this Arizona defense right now. So I'm going to pick the Rams to win and cover, but I think it'll be around a touchdown. So it's just kind of that gray area between 4 and 7. That's what I'm thinking it's going to be.
Yeah, I was thinking all on the same thing. Okay, moving right along. We're in good timing here. Green Bay, this is a Sunday night game. Big win against Chicago. We pretty much all saw that coming, I think. Aaron Rodgers against the Chicago Bears at home. We've seen that story play out before. And then Tampa Bay, off to a good start here. -2.5 at home against Green Bay. What do you think?
Well, a lot has been said about this game already. This is the game that a lot of people looked at on the schedule and were like, "This is the game we're going to want to see." And it's I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers versus Tom Brady. There's not much more you can say, but it is a little bit different than what it was in years past. I mean, with where the receiving cores are at for each of these teams. With Tampa Bay, I think Julio has been announced that he's not going to play. So they're basically left with, Russell Gage, Tyler Johnson, Cameron Brate, and Jalen Darden. I mean, that's pretty much it. And then on the Packers side, we've already talked about their wide receiver situation. It's well documented. Everybody's been talking about it around the league. So I do think the defense I have more confidence in is the Bucks, and I think that's the direction I'm going to go in ultimately. So I'm gonna end up picking the Bucks, but I think I'm going to pick the Packers to cover. Um, I just think these teams are in a very similar space offensively in terms of level of talent on that unit. So it's super defensive battle.
Yeah, Rodgers played a total of 8 games in the Sunshine State of Florida. Um, and he's gone in his career, and he's gone 3-5 in those games. But the numbers, the trend that we're seeing here is a little bit surprising. Since the start of the 2020 season, he's 0-2-4. He's thrown 4 interceptions in those 2 games, which is insane when you consider the fact that since the start of 2020, he's only thrown 6 total interceptions in the 30 games that he's played outside of Florida. So he's averaging 2 interceptions per game when he plays in the state of Florida since 2020, and 0.2 interceptions per game when he plays outside the state of Florida. Meaning he's throwing interceptions at a 10 times higher rate in Florida than he does anywhere else. That's just an obscure stat that I found on CBS Sports. By the way, all these lines are provided by CBS Sports. So if you want to see these lines in real time, you can go to CBS.com. Both teams, as you said, are in a similar situation in terms of what they have to work with, what these quarterbacks have to work with. But yes, I do think Tampa Bay at home right now is the more well-rounded football team. Tom Brady will find a way. I think you're going to see the Bucs defense play opportunistic football. I still think the game's slowing down a little bit for those Green Bay receivers, even though they are getting better. And I think Tampa Bay, will find a way to win this game. But I do worry a little bit about that, Green Bay defense and what that secondary might be able to do against these receivers, given that Julio Jones is out, Mike Evans with the suspension, and Chris Godwin is out as well. So we'll see who steps up, but players have stepped up before. I'm going to take the Bucs to win and cover the spread.
Okay, so a slight disagreement there, just with the spread, not with who will win the game. Now the next game, second to last game, it's going to be the San Francisco 49ers at the Denver Broncos on Sunday Night Football. The Niners are favored -1.5. I'll start off with this one. I think the Niners are in a really good spot in this game. I think Russell Wilson's a quarterback they're familiar with, and they're a team that's established and they know who they are, and that's not where the Broncos are at yet. So I'm not sure what to expect from this Broncos offense, but what I will say is if Jerry Jeudy does end up out for this game, that really does change things because the 49ers can really just key in on Courtland Sutton. He's really been Russell Wilson's only guy when Jerry Jeudy's been out of the picture that Russell Wilson could really trust. Albert O, I guess. I don't really know how to say his last name, but Albert O, he's been dropping passes. He's been kind of struggling a little bit. And then KJ Hamler just hasn't really been able to get involved into the game yet. So I'm going to pick the Niners here. I'm going to pick them to cover, and I'm going to make it my lock of the week.
I think that's a great lock of the week. I agree with you. And for me, it really doesn't come down to much else other than coaching. What I've seen from Nathaniel Hackett so far as a rookie head coach has not been very encouraging. I know it's super early, way too early to make a judgment on him as a head coach, but I think he's still in a little bit of a learning process. Some of the decision making, not only at the end of games with time management and all that stuff that we saw in week 1 against the Seahawks, but last week you were having an effective ground game. Javonte Williams, very talented guy, is averaging over 5 yards per carry, but you only gave him the ball 15 times, and you continue to throw the ball when your downfield passing game just isn't really working right now. There are things that need to be figured out, and I just think that the Niners, given what you said, the familiarity with Russell Wilson, and given what I know, this team is going to give me week in, week out. Now with Jimmy Garoppolo back in at the quarterback position with that running game. And I think, is George Kittle healthy? Regardless, though, I do think that right now they're the better football team. It is in Denver, so, anything can happen. But I'm going to take San Francisco to win just because I'm going to bet on the better coach right now. And that's definitely Kyle Shanahan.
Right, exactly. But I will say this about Nathaniel Hackett. In a very similar sort of way, I think through 5 or 6 weeks, a lot of people were questioning Nick Sirianni, the Eagles head coach, and he's been able to turn it around since then. So obviously, the jury's still not out on Sirianni. We still aren't 100% sure on him yet, but he's a whole lot better now than he was then. So if you need a reason to have hope, Broncos fans, there's your reason. I think um, Hackett could progress as the season rolls along.
Here's something interesting. I just want to, it's not changing my pick, just some stats for you guys. Um, Wilson, we know he's all too familiar with the San Francisco 49ers in his career with the Seahawks. Faced them 1 times. He went 17-4 in those games. And as well, Jimmy Garoppolo, 10 starts against AFC teams. The Niners are 500, 5-5. So we'll see what happens. If those trends continue, then our pick might be in a little bit of trouble. But I do feel pretty confident that the Niners, with Garoppolo in at quarterback right now, just have a little bit more stability, and they'll play the better coached football game, and they'll win this game.
I agree. Okay. Now for our last game of the show, it's going to be the Cowboys on the road to face the 2-0 New York Giants on Monday Night Football. Um, I'll start this one out. Just to put it simply, I really kind of wrote off the Cowboys going into that Bengals game. I really thought, the Bengals were going to have a chance to, right some of the wrongs they had in week one and really bounce back and get that offense going. But that just really didn't happen. Cooper Rush looked good. He did what he had to do. And the offense functioned just fine, which is what you're ultimately looking for when you have a backup in the game. Um, and then the Giants, I think they have the better coach in this matchup. I think many people would agree what Brian Dable has already shown as a head coach has been extremely impressive. He's not only been able to implement creativity to that offense, but he's also made this team play in a very cohesive way that they just haven't been able to replicate consistently over these past few years. Like we really haven't seen them be able to be in a position to even take advantage of some of Saquon's big runs or Daniel Jones's running ability in a very practical way until this year. And they're taking advantage of all of that, making use of all of that. So I've really liked what I've seen from the Giants. But I ultimately think for this game, with them at home, I am going to pick the Giants, but I'm going to take the Cowboys to cover the spread. I just think it's just going to be a close game. I think this Cowboys defense is going to give Daniel Jones some problems. This Giants offensive line has been better, but we've still seen Daniel Jones have those 1 or 2 turnover-worthy plays per game. And I think if the Dallas pass rush was as dominant, it is as dominant as they were in these past 2 weeks, then we could see that go up even more in this game from Daniel Jones. So um, a few turnovers here and there will keep the game close, and I think I'm going to pick the Cowboys to cover, but Giants to win.
Interesting. Something's got to give Monday night. Either the Giants are going to lose their first game of the season, they're 2-0 right now. And the reason I picked this game and put this game on the spreadsheet was because I thought we needed to talk about the Giants, give them some credit for what they've done so far up until this point this year. A little luck has been involved for sure. They're only scoring 20 points per game, but hey, they're getting the job done. And I think whether Daniel Jones is the guy going forward or not, I think Brian Dable has them going certainly in the right direction. And man, have we seen the really good version of Saquon Barkley these first 2 weeks. He's topped 100 yards rushing, I believe, in both games. He's, I think, second right now, or maybe even first in the NFL in rushing yards. This Giants offensive line has been good in opening up holes for him. The running game has looked a lot better, and they have some weapons, obviously, on the outside. It all comes down to decision making for Daniel Jones. But that's where I think this game is going to be decided. It's going to come down to Saquon Barkley. We saw in week 1, the Cowboys, for whatever reason, just could not stop Leonard Fournette on the ground. But they did a much better job last week against the Bengals. Fournette in that game averaged 6 yards per carry, and that's really where Dallas lost the game. If Barkley can get anywhere close to that number, it could be a long night for Dallas. But I do expect this defense, which is athletic, fast, opportunistic, ready to play. I think the best that the Giants have seen so far this year, with Micah Parsons' ability to wreck a game at any time. Man, is he so good. I watch Cowboys games because I love defense, and I watch Micah Parsons and Trayvon Diggs. That's what I'm watching. So, something's got to give. Either Cooper Rush is going to lose his first game of his career. He's 2-0 as a starter. Congrats, he's played really well. It's very serviceable, very, very serviceable backup, in my opinion. And then the Giants going to lose their first game of the year. But the history does not look good for the New York Giants. Maybe history doesn't repeat itself this time around. But I just think against this defense, considering that the Giants have lost 6 straight Monday Night Football games, 9 of their past 10 against the Cowboys, I just don't think, considering what we saw last week from the Dallas offense, that you can maintain winning this way in the NFL, scoring this 20 points per game and winning football games. I think the Dallas defense will be the difference maker. Someone's going to create a big play. I still don't fully trust Daniel Jones, and I'm going to take the Cowboys to not only, cover the spread, but win the game outright somehow, some way. I trust Cooper Rush and what he's been able to do from a decision-making standpoint, not making all too many mistakes, if at all. And I do think with Tony Pollard and Zeke in the running game, that'll get going at some point, and Dallas will win this game. But it will be close. I just have a feeling Dallas, they have an opportunity here. I think, I don't know their schedule, but they have an opportunity here the next couple games with some winnable games to really even hold their heads above water and be in a really good position once Dak comes back. So I think they're going to capitalize on that opportunity.
Right, exactly. So that's going to do it, guys, I think. Unless you have anything else to add.
No, I think that was good. That was efficient. 50-minute podcast. We love it. You now have plenty of time to get to your class, and I have plenty of time to get to where I need to go. So that's going to do it for episode 123. Hopefully, these picks are better than last week. That's all we're asking for this week.
Yeah.
That's not going to be all that hard, though. Last week was a mess. But anyways, enjoy your football this weekend. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. And I guess, unless you have anything else to say, just like Ime Udoka's chances of coaching the Boston Celtics this season, we are going, gone.
Yep. See you guys. NBA coming back pretty soon.